we have come to that point in time when we throw the floor open to questions, comments, and in this respect, I would like to ask our various presenters to put themselves at a table. If there are more than one of you at any table, please. So if the three of you here, it can't be your own table. So, just the thing. Okay, and if there are comments to be made, if there's discussion to be had, just raise your hand and you will get the mic and you can put your to anybody who has presented. Okay? So that's where we are now.
Good afternoon, Vanessa Boyce, Rotary Club of Tobago. I have a question. I think it's all these speakers, or any one of these speakers could respond to it. It's something that has always been on my mind when looking at different political systems. And the one in Rwanda has always stood out to me because I know a lot of people are always surprised when I say Rwanda. I know Rwanda would have gone through a lot of turmoil in 1994, they had the genocide and so on. But coming out of that, most people see the genocide as being just tribal, but it did have a political basis behind it. But coming out of that, they would have sought to transform their whole political system. And some of the things that always stood out to me was that, first of all, elected officials do not make up the executive. And I've always wondered if Trinidad and Tobago and other countries in the Caribbean, if we are mature enough to do something like that. Another thing is that both members of the opposition and the ruling party form the executive. So where you have elected MPs, you have now people from both the opposing side and the ruling party forming the executive. And that was something I always wondered if you think that we in Trinidad and Tobago are mature enough to go down that route. Another thing that they have done, which I found is very important and vital, is that the Youth Council nominates someone for the Senate, and the organization that is responsible for differently able people, they also nominate someone for the Senate. And now the Senate is actually go to the communities to discuss any bills that are brought to Parliament. So now you have the entire country and different communities part of the whole process of passing a bill in Parliament. So I just want to hear from those people present, maybe just a few speakers, what you all think about that idea and if we in the Caribbean could adopt anything like that.
Well, I'll just answer in terms of the Senate and leave it to the experts to deal with the executive coming from thing. Remember the Lloyd Best Big Maco Senate issue where the Senate wouldn't have any nominated members from political parties but be entirely composed of community interests. Now, how you organize the business of the Senate so composed is open to expansion. So the question of the Senate constituting itself as committees investigating government policy, the question of the Senate going out into the community and so on is all open to possibilities. So, and there could be many variations of that, but the key is that the communities and the individuals of the communities have a part and a say in policy making and decision making. Now, who would take on the issue of the executive being He pointed at you, he volunteered you.
I'm not sure first of all, let's deal with the Senate. To my view, the whole idea of a nominated Senate is nonsensical. Because our parliaments in the region do not have the full measure of democratic legitimacy that they ought to have. The idea of a nominated body as a legislative body. If therefore you're going to keep a Senate, I think first of all, that Senate might well be better appointed or elected according to proportional representation. That is to say, according to the proportion or the percentage of the popular vote that the political party would have received at a general election. I am not sure that in most cases we are ready to move from first past the post to proportional representation. Personally, I'm quite confused about proportional representation. So I think for the House of Representatives, I'd rather see that it's an elected body. In the case of the small jurisdictions, for example, here's the problem. Let's use Grenada as an example. The elected House, 15 seats. On one occasion, one party won all 15 seats. The same had happened in St. Vincent, and I think someone told me that happened in Antigua as well. On another occasion in Grenada, one party won 14 seats, and there was one person in opposition. Then the Senate. The Prime Minister, there are 13 senators. The Prime Minister has a shot at 7 initially. Then he or she advises the Governor General, having consulted the special interest groups, on 3. So the Prime Minister has his or her hand in the selection of 10 of the 13 senators. The leader of the opposition has only 3. The Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition could keep moving their senators in and out at will, if the senator doesn't say the right thing or whatever it is, or they got disenchanted. In my opinion, that is not a serious situation. It is therefore suggested that the cost of having a second chamber might be too high for a small jurisdiction, like Grenada, for example. Why not go to a single house? But keep the established seats and add an additional number of seats according to the percentage of the popular vote each party receives at the general election. So you would have a mixture of direct, first past the post, that is direct election, and indirect through proportional representation. It's a wholly elected body. All the ministers of government, everyone shall be sitting in that house, where they would be held to account for the discharge of the duties of their office. Then you have the members of the opposition. It means that if you were to adopt a system like that, you would never again have a situation where one party winning all seats and there's no opposition. Because even in the case where that one party won all seats, the difference in the percentage of the popular vote was such that it was less than 10% or within 10%. It therefore means if you use a proper formula for the allocation of the seats, you could have an equitable allocation of the additional seats, which doesn't give the ruling party an enormous advantage in the number of seats, and you would have a viable opposition. And then, of course, you could have those committee meetings to do the kinds of things that you're talking about. I do not see the possibility of opposition and government forming the executive, because it means that the advantage of the parliamentary system, where you could have policies being implemented, etc., you would have the opposition. If I'm in the opposition, I'll see to it that they don't get anything done. That's the possibility. I don't think it's so much a matter of maturity. I really don't think so.
Thank you.
I am always wary, as I was trying to say this morning, of engaging in idealistic creations of political forms. You don't imagine or create a political form the same way you don't imagine a language. Let's invent a new language. Impossible. These things are birthed in material and concrete reality. It is material and concrete reality that says what is possible. And you know the order of the discussion? The order of the discussion has to be technology first. This is why I was happy they were on the program. The technology is part of your material reality. Let's take something like the vote. Putting an X on a piece of paper is a type of technology. It is a type of technology that is suited to a particular material reality. When you move beyond that material reality, when you have the computer, for example, the computer introduces a new material reality that makes voting on a piece of paper obsolete. The problem with life is that we do not change it's not instant coffee. So when a new technology emerges, we don't shift immediately. Our consciousness is perhaps the last thing to shift. Sometimes we have people who still think in the medieval age. We are living in a post-medieval age centuries now, but they're human beings whose consciousness is still medieval. So all I'm trying to say is there is room for that kind of speculation about constitutional form. You see your question about Rwanda? Rwanda created that form as a consequence of a material and concrete historical experience in Rwanda. We have to begin by asking, what is our concrete historical experience? Which is why I cannot say what it will look like. I cannot even say, Professor, what it will not look like. Only God can do that. I can see all I can hint out are possibilities. So I can say something like, the computer means that you can vote in a different way. As we heard from our presenter a while ago, the internet means that you can have democratic discussion in a different way. And I can even venture as far, which I told Reginald Dumas opposing me, the computer means that the political party can disappear. It was not a fantastic thing. The representation is based on the idea, and it was born at a particular period, but always think historically. When did representation begin? When did the political party emerge? You must always go back. Aristotle taught us that. Go back to the very beginning. The end is contained in the beginning, but we can only understand the beginning when we approach the end. That's G.W.F. Hegel. The representation meant, one, that we were ignorant and our rep had information. Representation means that we are inarticulate and our rep is articulate. Representation is also based on numbers. 250,000 people cannot sit in a parliament, so you take one out of the 250,000 who is representative of those 250,000. The computer means now that all 2 million of us can sit in parliament. You understand what I'm saying to you? It was not physically possible for all of us to be in one room. But we can have a virtual meeting in which 10,000 of us can have a meeting. So
well,
those are the...
Except one thing, that 250,000 people can sit in parliament, but you still need an executive. Because 250,000 people cannot come up with a policy. No, they can't.
May I just
Okay.
Listen, Tennyson. The computer doesn't change, as you put it, how we vote. We have to vote based on the policy decisions that are made or presented to us as citizens. We vote for or against a particular policy. The computer, it seems to me, since I know nothing about it, but I could imagine this, helps us with the kind of information that we need, and we could get it faster as to how we make our decisions. But we still come down to our individual decision if we are going on the principle of universal adult suffrage as to how we vote. So the whole idea of that we would put the opposition and the government together in one, to me is ludicrous, because the opposition serves a very important role in governance. And that is what I think we're missing here in a parliamentary democracy.
No, I want to get... Yes, I want to get it wrong. One thing I have to say is that I agree with Tenny, forms of government have to evolve in terms of the circumstances of different countries.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll be very honest, I'm a little bit nervous right now. I feel a lot of things, a lot of emotions right now, and there are a lot of things that I want to say, but I don't have the time to say it. Firstly, I'd just like to say that I think that 250,000 people can be in Parliament if the Constitution so says, but it's just that they'll take a longer time to get to a resolution. They may not have a resolution, they might change it, go to something else. This is what society is about, it's dynamic. I'm actually going to sit down a bit now because, like I said, I'm a bit nervous. But what I'm going to say is that I've been here since Saturday night. I got picked up from the airport and I got dropped off at the Institute, and it's been fun since then. I have learned so much from so many different people. I cannot remember everybody's name. But I'd ask all of you to just look at my table for a minute. I have Guyana, Trinidad, and Jamaica here. And there's several mornings when I come into this convoy, or convois, or convoys. I'm from the Caribbean. How I see it, that's how I want to pronounce it, because that's my culture. There are several mornings when we come in and we sit down, we look at each other and we say, you know what, we need to split this group up because we have become rather close in such a very short time. But then We end up sitting down together anyway because we find that we have some things in common. We like each other's company. We like to talk. We like to discuss, which is what this is about. Then we have other people coming to us and they say, I need to split this group up. Why are you trying to split a group up that has found a commonality and are agreeing on things and discussing things? That's what I want to ask you right now. In addition, my colleagues over the room have been saying that they don't feel like they're having a voice. They can't talk. It's a very packed program. We have spoken to Suniti yesterday when she came to the cricket match. One of about 2 or 3 adults, 3 elders in this convoy. One of about 3. The rest of people were the youths you see at this table and about 2 or 3 more. The girls and the guy from the Kendra. All of you are talking about this very dynamic, this very wonderful visionary. I never had the opportunity to meet him. I wish if I did, because he sounds like a very smart and intelligent man, and there's so much he can teach me, but I've never met him. Yesterday, when I heard a cricket match was being held, because he likes cricket, he sees sports as being important also. Those people who did not know him showed up. We played a game in his honor. We came together. We did not have 11 versus 11. We had 11 players. We took turns batting and bowling each over. Well, except for the Jamaicans, they sat this one out. They were on the bench on the side, but they were supporting us. Oh, they were eating barbecue apparently. But they supported the rest of us who played. I will say that I learned that Nikita Ford can bat. And Shivani, where are you? She tries with bowling. I will say that some people tried to bat a ball really fast, really hard, but they didn't get it. But all in all, it was fun, and we learned about each other even more. And I will also say that there's a website right now that's up for this convoy, and I am on the website. The friends I've made are there, and we hope that we can take this discussion there because I feel it's a space that we can explore. I would like to ask the elders to please come there and give us your input. I have a book here. I've been taking notes since Monday morning. I can tell you what almost every single speaker said, and I can give you at least 20 points from all of them. If you challenge me on this, see me after I'm finished, and I will prove it to you. I have listened to you, and I know some of you have listened to us. We put a skit on the other day because we felt suppressed, we felt oppressed, we felt like what we're trying to say is still not being heard. Today, I saw one of my colleagues from Jamaica. He asked 3 questions. What happened? You went to someone else without answering those questions. How can we move forward if you just ignore people? They're asking questions because they want to know. I am not an economist specialist. I'm a communication specialist. I am not into science and, well, I'm into technology some because I do production work. But then for those things that I don't know, when I ask a question, I would like to have an answer. I don't want to be brushed over. I'm seeing Jillian raising her hand here. I know she has a lot to say to me concerning this. But all I'm saying is that it's a forum. Some of us have come together. We would love to have the experience that many of you have. We would love for you to share it with us. But you cannot do that if you just brush us over. And I know probably what happens is that this mic will get taken, you'll make an announcement, and we'll get another structured program. So be it, but I know that we have begun to integrate ourselves, and that is what the elders have been asking us to do. We have begun to make this change that you're asking us to do. Support us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. I'm actually not going to respond to the lady in the pink dress. I'm actually going to respond to the fella in the pink jersey. Because there was a response to the fella in the pink jersey who asked what was in Lloyd Best and Eric Sincere's book. And you didn't get an answer. And the response of some of the people was to say that we have to de-theorize in order to respond to the young people or whoever they are, saying that they weren't. I said, and I heard at the mumble, and I'm glad you raised it, I said that in order for me to cut down on my time, because the theory of my presentation was up front, and so I cut it in half and just went to the case study. That's what I said. I didn't say that we have to de-theorize because I'm an academic, and I can't say that. Okay, well, that is a relief. That is a relief, because I think that if we are in an occasion organized, and excuse the short pants because I am a participant, so I wasn't supposed to be speaking on some, but I can't resist. First of all, to the fella in the pink shirt. Salmon shirt, a salmon shirt. Huh? Ravi. Ravi asked a very important question. He asked what was in that book that is of relevance to young people in the Caribbean. And for me, that's a very important question, and it's one, and Kirk asked me here, so they have people who defining themselves as young people, they have people who defining themselves as elders, and I had put in the term Generation 62. So the people who don't have to wait for the elders to tell them when they could speak. The youth don't have to either, but we know that we don't have to. So to say what is in the book, it is, one, that plantation economies are those that produce what we don't consume. We send it out. We don't add value. We consume what we do not produce, which means that we have to sell things to get foreign exchange, to buy things, to consume what we do not produce. Which means that we are suspect to volatility, because if you're buying what you don't produce, and you're producing what you don't consume, you're not controlling the value chain. Things change over time, and there is volatility. That also produces limited entrepreneurial dynamism. It also has produced in the Caribbean what is called a monocrop economy, which is that you're producing one thing and one thing alone. So those 5 things, which there might be other characteristics of the plantation economy, Lloyd Best argues, continue to be characteristics of the Caribbean economy in the 21st century. So that is what is in the book. So if you want to understand why that is important, you need to read the book. But you also need to understand why that is a 21st century plantation economy, because I fear that the seduction with technology does not take these things into account. So when I hear someone saying that they moved into case studies about how social media was used for democracy in Guyana, it means that the plantation economy theorizing about the fact that we can understand nothing unless we are understanding the entire value chain has not been understood. Because all of this fascination with Twitter, BlackBerry, Facebook, when we are not producing any of that product or service, we are consumers. It don't matter if we could organize it. We consuming. So plantation economy in the 21st century has to take into account that we still have absentee landlords in Silicon Valley and Wall Street. Plantation economy in the 21st century has to take into account that the nature of the production process is not well understood because we're consuming and we are not producing. What that means is that the possibility of your doing the things that you said you wanted to do, which is buy a house, maintain your family, get a job, create businesses, is limited because we are not in control. And no matter how much Facebook, Twitter, Google, Amazon, unless you are controlling these things, are not going to matter. I am shocked that in the Caribbean, with the kind of literacy rates that we have, the people, the young so-called people in this conference, are not talking about Shadi. Anybody here know who Shadi is? Okay, let me tell you who Shadi is. Kenya you know who Shadi is? You're from Senegal. right? So, Shadi, Kenya had an election where the population didn't accept the response of the election. And a group of young Kenyans got together and created a product and a service to aggregate social media. That is now available. It is branded, it is available. It is not them talking about using someone else's product to do these things. So that is where I want to leave it. And I hope, Ravi, that in terms of why Lloyd Best's analysis of a 21st century plantation economy makes some kind of sense in terms of what that means, what kinds of things need to change. I am only hoping.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, good evening. I'm going to try and try to explain maybe why the young people are a bit impatient. When you're young, you are impatient. I went to the University of the West Indies and left there in 1985, half educated or less than half educated. Read Naipaul, found out this place is confusion, which I saw clearly. Didn't understand anything. Listened to some politicians about talk Lloyd Best, and didn't bother. He is a little difficult to read if you don't understand the history, if you don't understand. But somewhere I saw him wrote, Naipaul is our clearest ayat. I said, well, but this man see the same thing I see. Naipaul is our clearest ayat. Start to read the man. Point me to C.L.R. James, point me to George Lamin. And that's how you learn and you continue going. You don't wake up one day, and I'm still trying to find out about this place. I'm approaching 50 now. I'm approaching independence age, you know? So it's a bit of impatience. It's a bit of, he also said that, Lloyd Best also said that now we feel that automation and modernity feels that hard work is no longer necessary. He said something like that, not exactly. The hard work is, you have to keep chasing them good tea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Marcel, I didn't know you were Dr. Marcel until a few minutes ago. And just last week, I was asking someone from UE for an expert in innovation and innovation policy, because that's what part of what I'm supposed to be working on at the ministry I'm at. And your name, your LinkedIn link, URL link came to me. And then I was like, my friend told me, hey, Dr. Marcel, Gillian Marcel. I was like, you serious? And I was just having this conversation outside with her. Anyway, it's really, really good that this opportunity came about, that I could actually meet you in person. Something this morning hit me when I think Dr. Joseph was speaking, and this is more of an inquiry. I was trying to put my head around some of the ideas or concepts you kind of put in together in terms of how we're going to launch that new revolution, that new independence revolution. I wasn't too sure. Some of the elements seemed to have been importations. And I wasn't too sure how it would fit our current Caribbean condition and aesthetic. Because I think apart from 1970 and 1930s and so on, where there was actual revolutionary thought and action and things happening, apart from we worry money right now, we worry money right now, that's all, forgive me, Miss Trade Unionist, that's all I think. It's a self-interest to a large extent. I'm not sure if we have that kind of revolutionary spirit, except in pockets. We're seeing it now, but it's not coalescing. It's not kind of making those connections that would actually say that, I'm speaking about Trinidad situation, that would say that, hey, that we can actually mobilize a movement that could actually topple our institutional system on its head, that we can actually start over. When I say start over, I'm not talking about discarding everything that has gone before, but in terms of understanding our place at present and now, where we can use our creative potential to actually form the kinds of institutions in the image and likeness, using biblical terms, of ourselves. Now, I'm not sure that that is going to happen, so I'm not sure how the Occupy movement, etc., would help. Recently, I came across this book by Adam Kahane on Power and Love, Theory of Social Change. I read the introduction of it. And he was talking about bringing these two elements together, which seem disparate, and actually kind of bringing them together to create the kinds of social order and change that we want to see in the society. But then I was like, a few days after, I went on YouTube and Ella Andel's song, his book is in 2010, and then I was like, bring down the power of love. When I heard that song, I was like, but we had this long time, this knowledge and intellectual thought that this man think he created in 2010 or how many ever years. We have it here. We have it in the Caribbean. It's just that things, we probably don't make those connections, and we don't understand that. And she, in her song, she brought power and love in a more connected way than how I see him discussing it. The last point I wanted to make was, forgive me, we often criticize or whatever, and I'm not going back to the us and them young people, whatever, discussion or argument. But I attempted last year to try to work with some colleagues after some deep frustration. I expressed it in class. I was very emotional at that point in a trade class, an international trade class that I had at UE. Expressed deep frustration with the Caribbean integration movement. The fact that we ain't going nowhere. We have so many academics who've talked about what we could do, many of those suggestions not taken on board. I actually remember just now that in a presentation in Minister of Finance in 2010, I suggested that we create what would be the version of Google for all Caribbean knowledge so that we can access our own information in our platform. That was never taken on board. Needless to say, the Minister of Finance probably wasn't interested. And I attempted to do that, and there was some difficulty in something that came about as a result of some publication. I'm young, so I make mistakes and that kind of thing. So I tried to get on board people who could help with this particular movement for Caribbean integration. I was shut out. Well, that's how I viewed it. I was shut down, shut out, wasn't listened to or asked what happened by someone I respected very dearly and very, very, I was very disturbed by that. And this is someone who's supposed to guide and help and nurture young people like myself to learn and to help our region. So if we don't have that kind of working together with young and old or whatever, those kinds of groups, I don't think we're going anywhere. And people like myself are going to leave the Caribbean because of things just like that. Because we don't value ourselves, we don't love ourselves enough. That's why when there's a percentage, 60% of Trinidadians or many people in the region leaving, we persecute our own because of sexual orientation. We persecute our own because of whatever issue. We don't value our engineers and people who've been here because we don't want to pay them enough, and there's money in the economy, etc. And when they leave, whose fault is it? We've lost the capacity, the intellectual knowledge, And then we still maintain this colonial mindset that things should be this way and things should be that way. And we are not emancipating our own thoughts. Even the people who've spoken about emancipation in their writings have very colonial and neo-colonial mindsets. And I'm not sure where we're going. I would like to be involved in whatever movement, whatever that comes out of this, and try to advocate my fellow young people to try to make a difference 50 years hence. Hopefully from now on we could get something right. Thank you very much.
Question at the end. Because you told me that I had, what my prescriptions sounded like they were important. I think you said that primarily because I made reference to Occupy Wall Street and the Arab Spring. But I'll come back to that later. But in speaking, you said you went on YouTube and got a Caribbean perspective on power and love. And then you just said you don't see the thing, you don't see it here. I'm sorry, I don't see it here. You mentioned those things, but I don't see it here. But you went on YouTube and you saw that, and you were wise enough to see that whatever idea was produced later, your Caribbean intellectual, grassroots intellectual, had already conceptualized it. So it is right there. I did not prescribe, my friend. I deliberately did not prescribe in detail. When I made reference to Occupy Wall Street and the Arab Spring, again, because I heard a comment about the Lloyd Best plantation economy and production. In answering you, I'll answer the young lady and say to her that software production is production too. And you answered the question with your Kenya example. So while Silicon Valley and things, you're referring to the hardware of the computer and the mobile phone, the capacity for producing ideas is, you can apply Lloyd, you can apply that in the context of the present to understand how you can surpass the plantation economy which Lloyd Best was concerned about. So you have a capacity now to produce things which have value, and it doesn't need the big, heavy equipment factory production. You can just buy one of those and use your software and produce things that have value. So the world has changed and there are possibilities. So there are things you can do, and we are not insulated. When I speak of our material conditions changing, I think essentially since Christopher Columbus, the world had become global. Since he came in and he interfered with the national productive process of the native peoples, we could no longer speak of a separate world. The world had become global. So when there is internet production in one part of the world, it affects us. When there is electricity in one part of the world, we electrify ourselves as well. So let's hold on to this false view of our kind of autochthonous reality. Globalization, whether we like it or not, has a negative and a positive. As we heard this morning from a gentleman, everything has a positive and a negative implication. In speaking to the second independence revolution, we are fully aware of the limitations, but at the same time, we can examine what among us, around us, gives us the capacity to hold on to the positive and to transform our condition. And I never said it was going to be easy.
Thank you.